Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is a privilege for me to be participating in this prestigious international conference on industrial enterprise and system engineering to share the findings of our research. Before I present further, please allow me to say that this paper was talking about the systematic literature review of my research plan on sustainable supplier selection and order allocation in Indonesia. My promoter, who is also co-authoring this paper, gives some constructive remarks, and I am thankful to him for that. Ladies and gentlemen, I will be presenting my research paper entitled Sustainable Supplier Selection and Order Allocation, a Systematic Literature Review, co-authored by my promoter, Tengku Yuri M. Zahrul. I am Alina Cynthia Dewi. Before we begin the presentation, this is the contents of my presentation. First is an introduction, and then research and method. Move on to results and discussion, and the last is conclusion. First of all, why is it important to review this topic? Purchasing, as we know, including purchase order, supplier selection, negotiation, and shipping, and then receiving raw materials and components account around 60% of manufacturing companies' overall income. As a result, the process of acquiring raw material is very, very critical in every industry. The procurement procedure in Indonesia's manufacturing industry has been deemed inefficient during the last 2 years, since the realization did not proceed as planned. For 2020, it is 874.6 trillion with a realization of 1,133.4 trillion. This inefficiency may be caused by a number of factors, one of which is selecting suppliers and allocating orders. Supplier selection, the conventional criteria only consider quality, price, cost, delivery, and service. This criteria may not suitable in the current industry. The idea of sustainability has exploded in popularity in business during the last 3 decades. As a result, academics and companies alike are embracing the concept of sustainable supplier selection. On the other hand, sustainable supplier selection employs the triple bottom line in economic, social, and environmental to improve the purchasing process. However, obstacles might occur even when the best supplier has been chosen, one of which was the inability to overcome a variety of raw materials in order allocations. Several literature reviews that have been published only focus on supplier selection and the triple bottom line, or focus on supplier selection and order allocation without considering the triple bottom line. Thus, this paper aims to conduct a systematic literature review of sustainable supplier selection and order allocation. The following research questions are addressed in this paper. The first one is, what are the descriptive analysis of sustainable supplier selection and order allocation literature? And then the second is, which are the most frequently applied methods for supporting sustainable supplier selection and order allocation? This is our research method. The research method is based on the Danier and Tranfield 5-step process. The first one is formulating questions. The objective of a review, according to Russell et al., must be specified, and the scope of the investigation must be clarified. Then the second one is locating studies. We need to execute a database-driven research by Science Direct to discover the needed articles. Then the third step is study selection and evaluation. This step represents 3 stages of the selection. The first selection is only academic journal articles that have been peer-reviewed in English were considered. The second selection is the papers were appraised by their titles, abstracts, and keywords. And the third selection is skimming reading on introduction, research method, and conclusion. And the fourth step is analysis and synthesis. This step represents the analysis of the frequent use method in sustainable supplier selection and order allocation. And the last one is reporting and using the result. It is the outcomes of the analysis. To locating studies, we use 2 keywords. First is sustainable supplier selection, and the second is supplier selection and order allocation. 877 papers were published in the last 10 years from 2012 until 2021 related to sustainable supplier selection and supplier selection and order allocation. Then we selected only 53 papers to investigate the most frequent applied methods in sustainable supplier selection and order allocation. We select 17 papers to investigate the approach for supporting sustainable supplier selection and order allocation. Then we compile into 4 category approach. That is mathematical programming approach that used in paper in sustainable supplier selection and order allocation, and then hybrid multi-criteria decision making and mathematical programming approach, and then multi-criteria decision making approach, and the other. From 53 papers, 39% use mathematical programming approach, and 39% also use a hybrid multi-criteria decision-making mathematical programming approach. Then from 17 papers, we categorize by two approach that the most used is a mathematical programming approach that have 35%, and hybrid multi-criteria decision making and mathematical programming approach in 65% paper. From the 17 papers, the frequently used method for supporting sustainable supplier selection and order allocation problems mostly by goal programming. But this goal programming is not hybrid. Goal programming, 3 papers are single method, only use goal programming, and 2 papers use hybrid goal programming with best worst method and goal programming with DAA or data envelope analysis. From the literature, we also identified the strength from each method or from each approach. For the multi-criteria decision making, the strength is it is more practical and simple to apply. It also solves problem in a situation where there is no optimal solution, and then it is provide compromise solution from a set of alternative based on decision maker preference, and then it is also rank the alternative solution. And for mathematical programming approach, the strength is the ideal solution can be achieved while also satisfying hard constraint. It also able to solve problems with multiple conflicting objectives, and then it is find the best solution from a large number of alternatives, and then the last one is feasible to solve complex problems. But this both two approach is also have weaknesses. One of which one of the weakness of the multi-criteria decision making is it is difficult to choose criteria because the criteria often are conflicting each other. For example, if we want to prioritize the environmental criteria, we cannot also prioritize the economic criteria. It is very difficult to choose the criteria. And for mathematical programming approach, it can only examine issues on a limited scale, especially for a quantitative parameter. So it is difficult for them to generalize to a bigger scope. Okay, from the systematic literature review that we already done, we can conclude that first is pure research in sustainable supplier selection and order allocation problems found that 39% of tested approach are based on hybrid multi-criteria decision making and mathematical programming, and also only use mathematical programming approach. But from 17 selected papers, 65% papers were used hybrid multi-criteria decision making and mathematical programming in supporting sustainable supplier selection and order allocation. Okay, that's all. Thank you. And I would like to answer all the questions.